First of all, a very warm welcome to the Bootcamp 2. You already had the opening session in the morning and the how to pitch session in the morning as well. So now we are going to our multiplier event. It's a kind of panel discussion. So it is going to be an hour session, and you will get also involved in it. So you can prepare your questions in your mind already by listening to our wonderful speakers. So the topic of the multiplier event is entrepreneurship meets AI. So during or over the course of the last months, you all have run down over the online course that is like empowering you with skills around entrepreneurship and AI as well. So how do they meet each other? Or why do they need to meet? Is something that we would like to discuss with you. So we have three wonderful speakers here. So first of all, Tobias Brandt, you already know him. So he has founded a company 10 years ago. That's right. So he will go into more details around that. And then we have Thomas Schäfer here. He is also a founder. So he started or founded his company 5 years ago. And then we have the student on the panel. It's Yannick Wenger. He is currently in the way to become an entrepreneur, and already they have built a kind of startup-like project. It's called Moto. So we have three different kind of perspectives, and they would like to reflect on the journey, like how the last 10 years have changed the impact of AI that it has got on the entrepreneurship. So you can think about your questions as well if you listen to these panelists. And we will first start with Tobias Brandt with the Geospin story.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Riga, for the intro. First of all, I already want to apologize. As you might know, I have 4 days of conferencing on my back. So if my mind is a bit slow here and there in response to your questions or during our discussions, please understand. I try to get a good night's rest tonight, and I will be, on top of it tomorrow during the pitches. So as Riga already mentioned, it works very well. Good. Under the table. I founded a company 10 years ago, and it wasn't just me. It was me and actually 4 of my colleagues from my PhD program. So basically 3 or 4 of us finished at about the same time, and the 5th one was a friend of ours who started at the time and sort of did his PhD in parallel. But that's already very detailed. And that I think I have one slide on me. Yeah, but I think it's the slide from the first boot camp. So if you have attended the first boot camp or seen material from there, you know that one. So I'm here in Münster now, Professor for Digital Innovation. I will talk about Geospin today, and for my experience with startups, that's not the only example. Yeah, is everything all right?
No, it's about the slides. They don't see the slides.
They don't see the slides. You don't see the slides.
No, we don't know that there were slides.
And the street, we move it, that arrow is not moved.
Can move it over there, maybe.
No, that is.
Maybe we can move.
Yeah. No. No.
Maybe
As a slide, we can with another laptop.
Where it's true. Or
Wo ist das Soundverbindung?
Jetzt mit dem. Achso, warte mal. Ja, genau, das bitte.
Perfect. So if you have the impression that I'm talking about slides that I think are behind me and there are no slides behind me, feel free to say something. Because I just saw it there and I figured it. Now we need to turn on the sound. But as I said, I've been involved with the REACH ecosystem here for the past 4 years since I joined the university. So also the experiences and the things that I'll share during the panel, they won't be limited to the geospin case. But as I said, what we do in geospin, or what we did in geospin, was a very analytics or a very AI-centric business model. So we actually wanted to sell, well, not only wanted to sell, we actually sold an AI service. But I think one thing that's also already quite noteworthy is that at the time we didn't sell it as an AI service, because in 2015 AI was not a thing. I mean, it was a thing in research, but in practice nobody talked about AI. People talked about data science, data analytics, prescriptive this, predictive that. So it was a lot about analytics. It was about big data. It was about algorithms. It was partly about machine learning. So machine learning was kind of a thing. But of course, all of these things are AI related. And all of these things use algorithms and use techniques that we now associate with AI. But the time when people started talking AI again was basically in 2022 when ChatGPT came out, and this was really a shift in the whole framing of the whole topic. So where did we come from? So originally we came from research, as I said. So in our research we developed algorithms that use urban data, so data from cities, to essentially make recommendations. So for decision making, for our starting case was for charge point infrastructure. Because at the time there was also a lot of charge point infrastructure projects, a lot of funding, and the idea was that, well, if we take millions and then even billions of euros to build up this infrastructure in Germany, in the Netherlands, and in all over Europe, let's do it in a smart way. And basically our selling proposition was that we could use data on existing charge points to figure out what actually drives usage of those charge points. So where to place them optimally, and we used AI algorithms for that. And as I said, originally we started, in a bootstrapped way. So with our own, we had an exist funding, so some seed funding from the government. But then we had our own, the first projects and so on that came in. We also had something with the bank. So I mean, you might be aware that banks don't require as many branches anymore, as many offices anymore as they used to. So they are trying to scale down their branch network, and of course they want to do that in a way that does not antagonize their customers too much. So there's also a lot of analytics going on where to close down a branch, or maybe, you can close down 3 branches, but you open a new one basically in between, so that the distances that customers have to go if they need a bank, like an actual physical building, they don't change that much. So these were some exemplary projects that we had at the time. But a lot of that was project work. And actually this slide that I'm showing is a slide that I recently used in a presentation on sort of the sequence of success and failure in entrepreneurial venture. Because we started in a bootstrap way, and that was very successful in the beginning. We did a lot of projects. But as I don't know, has one of you already experienced in consulting? The consulting industry a bit, right? So consulting is something that pays well, but scales badly. Because you need people to do ChatGPT. But and that sell it as your offer. But it pays very well, but it doesn't scale very well. And of course, if you are in a startup, you actually want to build something that scales well. Because this is how you make money as a startup. And we were so busy with our project work that the overall development of the platform, this analytics platform that we wanted to build, left behind. So you have successes, but then this sort of reassessment that you're failing in one dimension. And then we got an investment, which was great. We got an investment by the TÜGA and by the High-Tech Gründerfonds. Also the High-Tech Gründerfonds is basically the largest semi-public venture fund in Germany. And the TÜGA is a company from the energy industry. And that was great. At least for a while. So we got some funding that actually allowed us to focus on the platform. So before this investment, we did a lot of project work. We had a lot of I think in one of our discussions, I described it as a sort of this assemblage of computer scripts, of code scripts, code snippets, and so on. But it wasn't in an orderly fashion. It wasn't a piece of software. And this actually allowed us to build a piece of software. And then again, this sort of turned into a platform, and essentially a geodata platform. But on top of this geodata platform, we were able to run AI algorithms. And we did that for a while. And first we built it sort of as an internal platform that we could use, and where we could run our algorithms in a way that is more efficient than these assemblages of scripts, so that if we have to do consulting, we can do it very efficiently, because we just need to push a button, and then we can produce a great report and just sell it to the customer for many sort of consulting hours. But you already see, this has nothing really to do with AI, but in a way it does, because at the end of the day, everything is still sort of human endeavor. So if you start a startup, even an AI startup, you will still have at least one human in there. That's you. But of course, in our case, we had 5 founders, and there was some conflict. And some, like over the years, this conflict kind of escalated, which actually led us to selling the company. And technically it was an exit, but I put it in quotes, because it was not I'm here working. So you can imagine that it was not, an exit that made me well off for the rest of my life. It was sort of a forced situation so that we could continue in the first place. But this was actually not that bad in hindsight, because we sold on, I think, December 28th, 2019. And you all know what happened a couple of months later, COVID. And I think a lot of startups simply failed during that time because, there was no investment anymore, especially in the analytics space and in the AI space. Actually, there was a lot of startups that failed because companies became very much reluctant with respect to their investment, their riskier investments. But as you see here, we were safely in the arms of our corporate mother. So ultimately, this is sort of the story of Geospin. And That's an example. Yeah. So this is what the platform looked like in the end. So it's basically open platform, yeah, where customers can buy an account, yeah, but you also have some sort of free to use stuff. You know, it's like Google Maps in a sense, yeah. So we can zoom into specific locations. That then you can book sort of additional analytics services on top of it. Yeah, and these analytics services are sort of pre-made AI-based, yeah, essentially pipelines. They are coding pipelines that sort of do some sort of analysis. I think I gave one example here. So for instance, we also did a lot in sort of real estate investments. Yeah, and this was a service where investment companies like real estate companies, they can sort of predict how prices would evolve in a city over time. So this was one of the services that looked at. Yeah, but this is basically what AI looked 10 years, what AI looked like 10 years ago. So as I said, maybe in a nutshell, as a summary, nobody talked about AI in the beginning. Yeah, and it was all data science, was all analytics. And then in 2022, we suddenly started to be an AI company. Yeah, because we were technically an AI company all along. But now it was actually a selling point. And that I think it's already sort of a important thing to keep in mind when you start your own venture, especially if it's sort of a tech-based venture. You need to be aware what sort of the conversation is about. Yeah, also what the conversation in the industry is about. Yeah, so that you sort of use the right labels, use the right names at the right time. And with that, I pass on to Thomas.
Yeah, before.
Oh, yeah. One.
So as you have seen, you can do or sense or should seize an opportunity as an entrepreneur if you see new technologies emerging in that field. And as we have seen this kind of graph or development of the startup, we ended with the pandemic survival. And that connects to the next startup that is initially founded during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And they sensed another opportunity to bring the technology in.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. So let me continue. So my name is Thomas. So maybe a few words about myself. So currently I'm an assistant professor at the University of Münster at the Institute of Entrepreneurship. I also studied here in Münster. I mean, hopefully you've seen that Münster is a great city and it's also a great university, right? So I studied here my bachelor masters and then also did my doctorate here, right? So I focused during my PhD on topics on open innovation, innovation management, but also new product development. And from this state, with two friends from my master's studies, we co-founded Pivoti. So from my PhD studies, we shifted from, or I shifted from research on innovation to the application of innovation, you could say. So what did we do? I mean, we started in the pandemic times, but actually it was not a big problem because what we did, we were analyzing internet data. So think about companies. Companies always need to come up with new product, with new services, or they could even think about, or they have to think about how could I maybe react to a new trend. Just think about the pandemic. Everyone in Germany was buying toilet paper. So it's super crazy. So I think in France, everyone was buying wine, and everyone in Germany was buying toilet paper. So you went to the supermarket and no toilet paper were available for like, I don't know how long, right? You had to be lucky to get some toilet paper. Super crazy. So what do companies normally do? They talk to customers using surveys, maybe also doing some interviews about maybe trends, about how do problems, wishes change for companies. And we thought, why don't we just take the data that we already had, like internet data? Just think about social media. People discuss about topics all the time. They discuss about which display should I buy, which Apple Watch should I buy, which smartphone should I buy. And we thought, why can't we just take this data and then extract the relevant information for companies, which are problems and wishes, for instance, in an early version of our solution. So we had, on the one hand, like a big database from discussion forums, social media posts, and then had some AI analyzing this millions of posts and breaking it down to the relevant information for companies. So we tried to digitize market research. So, and the funny thing was, like, it was 2020, something around that. Some people or some companies were already talking about AI, but it was not so in the minds of the broad public, because as all of you know, ChatGPT came out around 2022, and this was then the time when everyone was talking about AI. We have to do AI. And the first question always was like, okay, what do you really want to do with AI? Yeah, maybe we can just use it for everything. Doesn't work like that, right? But let me continue first on what we developed from this stage or from our solution. So on the left side, or let me go back, on the left side, we had like a huge database from discussions or from like customer interaction, you could say. We had to web scrape them from websites, from social media, using some APIs and different stuff. And then we had to analyze them, right? Mostly we used different types of natural language processing algorithms. So we used some existing solutions already, like BERT transformer models, different type of transformer models, but then had to train them for our purposes, right? Because there's no one size fits all approach. And we developed like what's over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it's lagging. So
It's really lagging, yeah.
yeah.
So we came up with a search tool, you could say. I mean, we called it works like Google. Of course, it was not as powerful as Google, but what you could do is like we had millions of customer discussion in our database, and you could type in, for instance, a new trend, any word you can come up, a product that you have, for instance. And based on this, we did an analysis in the background. I mean, it was done in real time at this time. It just looks fine when we just sleep. Yeah. I didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Now it works again. So you can type in, I don't know.
So usually everything runs very smoothly here.
But maybe I'll just continue, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, just
Speak from your heart.
Yes, I always speak from my heart. So yeah, so what we did, like we developed a web app where companies could log in. It was a classical software as a service solution. Companies could log in, just type in different trends, words, products, and then get an overview of actual or recent customer problems or customer wishes. So this was like the solution that we worked on for like the last 4 years. We were then able to sell the software to one of our customers. And then I returned back to academia. But let me talk again about, yeah, so maybe what was different. I mean, it's like 5 years ago. It's only 5 years, right? But I think the changes were happened very fast. So now I can, it's different.
Yeah.
No, Zoom crashed.
Interesting.
Or Zoom connected.
Maybe I can turn around a little bit.
Yeah.
So first of all, back in 2020, 2019, there were, of course, some platforms, you could say, where you can get some pre-trained models, like for summarization. I mean, just think about millions of posts. You want only to get the most important information. Of course, you need a form of summarization. But back in 2020, this was the biggest problem. Nowadays, it's completely easy because you just log into ChatGPT and it's a perfect summary of everything you get. But back in 2020, it was very difficult. And there were some solutions already on the market, but they were not that good. So all in all, we had very little guidance on how to label our data, for instance. I mean, to come up with a very nice functional solution, you have to, first of all, get some nice training data with a good quality in the best case. And then you need to label them because you have to define the output that you want to receive with your machine learning model afterwards. So we started completely in the blue, right? Just labeling as we thought it was good, right? And then did some test runs, but of course it was not that good at the beginning. We had to iterate, we had to come up with different labels. So what we did every day, every one of our founding team and also our student assistants was mandatory to label every morning like 500 posts, right? So because that's what you have to do, right? And we had to redo it so often, but that's just the definition of trial and error, right? So we didn't know how many label training data do we need? Like, is it like 500, 600, 5,000 or 50,000, right? We don't know. I mean, I would say at the moment it's still very unclear, you could say, but I mean, nowadays you have more success stories which you can rely on. So we had little to no guidance, you could say, of course, from theory, but for a business case, this was quite normal. That one was not much guidance. And maybe also the second part on the right side, LLMs were weak for coding. I mean, back in 2020 or 21, I think you could already access GPT. So there was no interface for GPT, but you can access, you were able to access it via IPA. And it was very bad. So we used it for summarization because this was the biggest problem that we had in the beginning and was very, very bad for summarization. But just 1 year later, it was the best solution you could ever think of. It was miles ahead of the other solutions that you were able to find online. So the development speed is very, 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 very fast here. And I think this is definitely one thing that changed. Maybe the third part, data headache, manual data cleaning required. I mean, the data, so we did some scraping. There were some solutions where we could already draw on some APIs to get more clean data, you could say. But I think nowadays there are already some data providers that provide you with better data. That you, of course, you have to pay for it in some ways, but it definitely helps you to speed up the whole development process. And maybe another interesting part, which is maybe a little bit different to your story, Tobias. Some people were already, or some companies were already talking about AI. But I think before ChatGPT became that famous, they mostly had like skepticism of AI. Because, of course, it's a black box in a way, and you try to explain it to them how it worked. But they had some fear in some ways, because it was such a new one and such a new solution, and they were just not sure how it works and how safe it all was. But after ChatGPT was released in 2022, everyone was only talking about AI and wanted to do AI. And this also leads to the fifth point. So a lot of people were just interested in our solution, and we had some customers, and they were always talking loud, okay, this is AI. So we now used your solution to analyze or to come up with new ideas for products, to analyze some customer interaction. Can't we use your solution to improve our controlling? No, not really. That's not how it works. But it was like, okay, AI can do everything, right? So the companies had, first of all, a little bit of skepticism, then were overhyped with AI. But then you needed to educate them in a way, right? So what's quite interesting, I mean, of course, what you could have done, or what we also did in some ways, was then through this consulting case in that way. I mean, it's like you're a startup, you need to make money. But I think this is what like the 5 biggest points of challenges was like 5 years ago. And if we just look into the situation today, of course, the models that are available are sometimes very, very, very good, ready to use. You have specific pre-trained models. So for instance, we worked on a research project currently on patent data, so with patent, and there are some specially bird-trained transformer models for patents, or trained on patents. So you have already some specialized models, and you have some success stories. So now you get some hints, some points on what you should do in which order, right? Because otherwise it was like trial and error. But nowadays you can already improve, I would say, definitely the development process. LLM, XLR coding. You have agents which can do the work of a lot of people and can definitely speed up the whole development process. Christian, I just showed you one solution where you can just use some prompts to create web apps and also get automatically all the infrastructure stuff, so the publishing, which is quite nice. Talent, I think we talked about it. We tried to get some people back in 2020 as well, and we also got one, but it was like people that were studying that. I mean, in Münster especially, there are a lot of students. Skilled people are easier to find, I would say, but also sometimes because they are very expensive. AI is normalized, right? Just look at the markets. There are so many AI startups that went through the roof, NVIDIA and all the stuff. Companies want to use AI, but I think the most pressing challenge, what I see, is that you need a specific use case, right? So what do I often hear when I talk to startups is like, who's your customer? And still I get the answers like everyone, right? And of course, maybe sometimes, but you have to start with a specific persona, with a specific user group. And when applying AI, you need a specific use case. What do you want to do? So you can't automate the whole controlling process at the beginning. So you have to start maybe with one part, right? Or find a specific niche where you can start, build a nice solution, and then extend and scale. And then you can come up with a broader solution. Yeah, I think these are my thoughts on what has changed within the last 5 years.
Yeah, maybe I can add to the to what you have said. Like, I'm in my current research, I observed 2 startups, and in one of those startups, they said that their development process speeded up.
Yeah.
So that's with AI, they are faster in coding, and even in sometimes they don't need the big brains to a certain extent. So that is doing very well back. So it will continue to develop and continue to improve. So that is the kind of aspect that I can underline as well. And as you have seen, AI, we are talking about AI, but in both startups, it has got another kind of impact, and it is kind of a real black box in a sense, to a certain extent, and it is like only 2 facets of those of that technology. So we have seen the pandemic as a starting point in this venture, and now we are going to hear a student perspective that is currently challenged by AI technology, but they are also on the way of living with it and using it to speed up their development process. The motor story.
Yes. So who am I? I'm Yannick Wenger. I'm a student here at the University of Münster. I'm currently studying a master's in information systems with a major in data science. I already did my bachelor's here in business informatics. I'm a co-founder in SPE of Motor and a chair member at the University of Münster, which is an association for information system students, professors, and practitioners to connect to each other. And what do I really do? What on a daily basis? So we are building Motor, which is a all-in-one SaaS platform, so software as a service platform for the German all-day after-school supervision children. and we are building it heavily with agentic AI, and we are preparing the all day after school supervision for the upcoming Ganztagsförderungsgesetz, which is a mouthful if you're not German, which is a legislation that will drive up the demand of after school supervision. And we are trying to prepare this branch, this scene for the upcoming challenges. And of course, I'm attending some classes and sometimes. And what do I want to talk to you about today? It's how to use AI as a student and as an entrepreneur to build something. And what do I think? What is my thesis? This was a recommendation of ChatGPT. I think that using AI, students or entrepreneurs can leverage oneself 10 to 100 times. And it's giving you faster learning and faster iteration speed between prototyping, testing, and the whole design thinking approach. We learned the first boot camp. And my main thesis is AI is not an autopilot currently. It's more like a co-creation or co-thinking apparatus. So, first of all, Gen AI as a student. I started my studies here in Münster in 2021 and obviously studied without AI. I didn't even know that you could access ChatGPT 3 or 2 via API calls. And even this wasn't known to me what API calls were. So it was very tedious. I was reading books. I was reading the lecture slides. I was also attending some classes. And it was very tedious to think alone from my current perspective. So I believe you all know it. And then in 2022, ChatGPT came out. Who used ChatGPT in the first year? Okay, that's almost all of you. And I was really enthusiastic because I gave a question, I got an answer, and I could use it to my advantage for some assignments, to write something. And I heavily relied on AI, even though the output in perspective from to now or even before was not really good and it shouldn't really have been used if you read through what the output was. So it was shifting my perspective into, okay, I have my task, I put it into ChatGPT, I can get an answer and just post it, copy paste, and don't think about it, done. Which was not the ideal way to work with AI. And I learned that AI isn't really the authority. Then in 2023 and 24, the models got better. You had the models had more context length. You could use it on a larger scale. And we also had some AI awareness from the university on how students should or shouldn't use AI, which I believe ended in nothing.
Why would you say that?
And I learned about some practical applications, like for me, software development. And it was still a bit tedious because you had your question, you got your code, you had to copy paste it into the right structure. You had to know where the right place is. You made some mistakes. You then put like the whole file into ChatGPT, and then the context was overflown, and the answer was worse than ever, and it got not really anywhere. And then in 2024, I started to leverage it. Unfortunately, after my bachelor thesis. So after I submitted my bachelor thesis, I learned about Claude from Anthropic. Does anybody know Anthropic? Yeah, me too. My bachelor's thesis was in the area of software development, and I could have really benefited from using Claude, and this was like my first few years of using AI. But what really changed for me as a software developer and as an entrepreneur was agentic AI, agentic generative AI. So what does it mean? It means that the AI has the capability to call tools and use these tools to affect something outside of the LLM, so outside of the actual. And this started in February this year, like when Claude Code was released, which is an agentic tool you can install on your local machine. And it's like it's living inside of your computer. It can read files, it can write files, it can do commands. It has an overview of your file structure of everything. And we leveraged the hell out of it while building our first prototype. And for example, we had a date set for 2 test phases for some schools we were working with. And before that, we had our project visit. Let's start from the beginning. The whole idea came to us from the school themselves. They went to the university and said, there's legislation upcoming and we are afraid. We think we cannot handle it really well. And then we had a project seminar, we did some research, we developed our first prototype, which was a mobile website we could use with a mobile phone to scan an RFID chip, and we got a response back, basically, but via a server. And this was the kernel, the first version, where we didn't really use AI, and we leveraged it later. And then we got some funding via the BMFTR or BMBF, the Dati Pilot Förderung, and we could work on the project even longer and had some money to spend. And we developed it further. We developed some of our own IoT devices. We developed our own server platform infrastructure, and where it really took off. So we had an old infrastructure, and then we needed to change it because we learned from a colleague of mine that what we were doing isn't really scalable. It was built on old infrastructure, on old knowledge. It was code from 2 years ago from the project seminar where we didn't really care about, we cared about it a lot actually, but we didn't know that we could turn the idea into a company, and we wanted to be prepared to scale it. And so we had to make the decision to change our infrastructure. And we had our deadline, we had like 2-3 months. And we had to rewrite everything in languages we didn't really know, with architectures we didn't really understand, and with tools we didn't use ever before or learned at the university. So then Claude Code came out, and I poured like 3,000 euros in API tokens into it to make the deadline. And it completely changed it. I had a hockey stick image in there, so it really took off. I could learn all the languages. I could learn the architecture. I learned how to combine everything. I learned how to actually use it. So I learned from my mistakes earlier that you cannot trust the AI instantaneously. You have to come up with a way to talk to it, to think with it, and only then you can use the agentic features to create the code. So you first my workflow is like, I have an idea and I ask the AI, what does it think of my idea? Then I get some more insights, and then I think I come up with some modification to it, and I iterate, and then when I'm satisfied that I know what I'm doing, but the AI knows what I want, then I say, just do it, and I have like a first product, and then I test it, I see what's wrong, I can iterate again, and I did that for half a year, every day, 18 hours. And it changed my mind. Like sometimes I was searching something in the kitchen and was in my mind, I wanted to ask Claude, like, where's my salt? So I used it so heavily, and I convinced my colleagues to also use it and to leverage the power, because we were developing so fast, maybe a little bit too fast, because we developed faster than we learned, actually. So we made some mistakes, but that's okay. That's always the case. And with that, I really got confident. I got confident in my skills. I got confident in my knowledge, in that what we are doing is really possible, that it's also feasible, that it's that we as a three-man team of somewhat novel software developers that could really do it. Then I also got the knowledge. So as I said, I learned all the languages we used for that. I learned the architecture. I understood how to really build, because I always wanted to build something big, but I never knew where to start or how to do it. And I could never imagine that without AI, we developed something like that. And it really pushed us forward. And of course, speed of building. We did work in, as an example, we had the 2 test phase. And on the web, we barely made the deadline. We had something finished. We deployed it into the school, and it should last 1 week. First day, deploying, explaining the software. So many questions, so many bugs, so many issues. We didn't really know what was going on, even though we worked on it half a year. And then we got the feedback, we wrote everything down, everybody said. Then we drove home, aggregated the information, made a plan on what must be fixed, and how the users really wanted to work. Made an entire night shift until 9 a.m. so I could push the new version to the server so they can use it. And at 10 a.m. the after school supervision started. And then at 12 p.m. we drove again to the school and got some more feedback. So we could really iterate in a speed that was not imaginable without AI. And we started on Monday. We had so many issues. Tuesday, also still many issues, but less. Wednesday, almost all issues were gone. And on Thursday, no more issues. Now we could really start to build further. So we asked on which features do you want? Which features do you need? And then the next test phase, next week, we started, we knew how to deploy, how to frame it, how to explain it. And in the second week, we didn't get any negative feedback. We got only positive feedback. They really liked it. They only gave us feedback on, okay, that's really nice. Could you please do this and this, new feature? And obviously we delivered, we made the features as fast as possible, so we could iterate inside of that week like 3-4 times. And this is only made possible by AI. And I believe the startups or the companies that iterate the fastest are the ones that are going to grow to the largest. And some domains of application that I use AI for daily So obviously coding. Then we do also some initial research. A lot of AIs can search the web by now, like Perplexity, ChatGPT, even Claude, my command line interface tool, can search the web, and it made things very useful to if you have an error, the AI I can tell it, please search this and this, and it can figure out how to fix it. Then we use the project management, how to structure our tasks. As I said, we aggregated the information. Obviously, we were using AI for that. And for content creation. So our entire marketing website, the texts are created by AI. But watch out, as I said in the beginning, don't just auto-accept anything. You have to read what the AI outputs. And you have to, in a lot of cases, give additional information and think about what is the AI doing wrong and giving the right context so the AI outputs to a text that is really usable, because it's too generalized. And so in my belief, you should use AI as a tool that you talk to. You will ask questions, you let the AI ask you questions, so you on your own thing and give some feedback, and you iterate as much as you can, and then only then you really let the AI do something. Yeah.
Thanks, Yannick. I think you said AI is giving confidence, but of course your confidence always lies on your own brain. Of course, that's also an important point. So we would like to open up the discussion for the audience. So if you have any kind of question.
Sure. Thank you, all of you, so much for sharing these very interesting stories. I think I at least learned a lot, and that was super interesting. I have lots of questions for all of you, but maybe I'll start with you, Yannick.
Yeah.
So where do you stand today with Moto? And what do you think? How much of an IT guy do you still need to be in order to be able to provide a SaaS solution nowadays?
Where do we stand? Currently, we are preparing our go live for the school we are working with, which will happen at the end of October. And this will go through the entire school year. So this is what we are preparing. And do I think you need to be an IT guy to build a SaaS platform? It depends on how large it's going to be. Obviously, you need some knowledge about what the AI is doing, because you need to reach like the difference, the changes, and you need to understand it a little bit. And you need to understand the architecture, or how data is transformed or used or sent from one location to another. You need to know about APIs. You need to know about UI, UX. You need to know about the individual tools and languages that you use. So you can learn that all with AI, but you still need to know it to fact check and iterate with the AI, or else you're just auto-accepting.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yes,
Maybe to add a thought to what Yannick said. I think to build a prototype, sort of a rough prototype, basically, but to build a marketable product, you need to be an IT, or you need an IT person. But this IT person, and I think this reflects on what you said with this leveraging, your skill tenfold to the 100-fold. It's so much more powerful today with respect to turnover than 4 years ago. Yeah, it's also what we see sort of in our seminars and our projects and so on. Same.
May I follow up just shortly, quickly? Now we try to encourage our students a lot of times to start building prototypes by utilizing AI. But when is the perfect time for them to switch? Because initially they don't have an IT guy in their team. They are looking for software developers, data scientists, and so on. But sometimes it's hard because at a certain level, it's hard for them to take a step back again and start from scratch. So that might be a challenge too, because they basically need to start from scratch again, or can they build on that prototype that has been developed based on the AI conceptions?
Maybe if I need to add something. I think also what Yannick said was that this user-centric design, which we have been advocating for, I don't know, decades for in sort of, software development, has accelerated so much. Yeah. And I mean, with this 1 day turnaround for new deployment, this is crazy. And I think that is sort of the stage where this switch might be necessary. Yeah. So if you have the impression you can still, you can still build on the feedback that you receive from your customers, because they, at the end of the day, matter. Yeah. I mean, you're building for them. And if you have the impression that you can use their feedback and improve the product, then you're fine. If you run into issues that things don't work, that you don't understand what you're doing anymore, then it's the time to switch. But I think what you also said is that basically you can throw everything you have into the AI and it will try to come up with sort of a better solution than once you have the IT guy. I mean, when you told us, so the project runs at my chair, and when you told us that you completely changed your code base between our last meeting and this meeting, it was unbelievable. With new languages, I mean, he said it earlier, it's crazy.
But maybe to add in this regarding this topic, I think, why do you build a first prototype? The first prototype is to show the problem solution, right? You have identified, yeah, exactly. So I think utilizing all you have at the moment to build an early prototype that is, of course, not complete and maybe has to be iterated on, definitely. But I think even if it's just a business administration student who is not a coder but understands how it works, I mean, like infrastructure wise, I think it definitely makes sense. And then you can not go live, but show it to your customer and then iterate and then come up with an improved value proposition and then continue. And at this, at some points, you really have to think, okay, we need some IT guys. How do we get them? And then you have a better negotiation situation with a problem solution fit.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
That's
Yeah, thank you for your insights. It was really interesting to follow your experience. I have a question about team management, and I want to hear opinion of all speakers, especially the speaker who represents the very first startup, because you mentioned that you've had 5 co-founders, right? I'm not sure, but I think co-founders have the same same parts in projects, so same power of decision making. And do you think it was complicated? Because for me, it sounds like there are so many people. I'm not used to hear 5 co-founders. I think usually it's like several people and some to leads. But in your case, you were all very equal in decision making. And do you think it was a nice idea and just
It's complicated. There was conflict in the end, which led to sort of the breakdown. And then I would have to lie if I said that, the seeds of this conflict was not there from the beginning. Because I mean, very early on we did, this coaching for high performance teams. It sounds very nice when you are the high performing team. But we went with this, or we worked with these coaches who, I think one of them was like a senior partner at McKinsey for many years, and the other one had he had a leadership position at several pharmaceutical companies, and they had sort of a 2-day workshop with us. And at the end of the workshop, they told us basically all our deepest secrets. And sort of all our issues that we have, and how we fit together. From looking back at that, I think the main issue that we had was sort of different requirements with respect to, let's say, financial security. So of course, risk aversion. Yeah, I think that's the most specific word. Yeah, so they were. I mean, I'm now in federal in state employment. Yeah, I cannot be fired. Basically, I have a safe income, so it's very hard for me to talk about risk aversion of other people in sort of a negative manner. Yeah, because obviously I'm in a very safe position now. But one of them, he had a very, very high degree of risk aversion. The others didn't, and even I think, even though I've always been sort of state employment. Because also two of us did it sort of on part-time because we were still closely linked to the university. Yeah. But that was really the key issue. It was all about risk aversion. So if you are a team, and I think founding teams of 5 can work. It's hard. You need to talk a lot. It's more likely not to work than to work. But you have to be very, very honest to each other. And I think you need to focus on sort of what you're willing to give and what you're willing to risk sort of over the next years. Because of course, I mean, we were at the end of our PhD, so we were all sort of at the end of, our 20s, early 30s, something in that range. It's sort of the time when you start building a family, if you haven't already. Yeah, so it's a time when there's sort of you don't just think of yourself anymore. Yeah, which is why, I think many of you are still younger than that. It's the perfect time to, start a startup or start something. Yeah, because many of you might not have yet, any kids or anything that you keep in mind and worry about. But that's really the thing. Yeah, so 5 is a lot, and most of it is about risk aversion and sort of aligning yourself. Yeah, but I think you probably also have something to share about that. And you go, but then I would also like to hear about Yannick and whether you have talked in your team about that yet. But maybe
you can. Yeah. So the project seminar started with 8 people, and the grant we got was only for 3 people, and only 3 people really wanted to work further on the project. So we had our 3 founding members, and in May of this year, another friend of us joined. But the main group, we already knew each other from the beginning of the bachelor, even before that. That the how do you say in English, focus preparation course, and we already knew us for some 2-3 years before we got into the project. So there was never really much tension. Obviously, some people work sometimes more than others, but that's how it goes. We rarely fight. We are primarily on the same team, and give us each other feedback. Really good.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. So before funding there, I went to a few talks of very successful entrepreneurs, and they all said, yeah, team is the most important stuff, most important part. And even if you ask an early stage investor, they always say we don't invest into the solution, we invest into the team, right? And this is definitely the most important part. And I definitely would recommend doing it with a person that you know a little bit better, because just think of it, like, of course you will work a lot, right? You will work on the weekend and you will work like 10 hours plus a day. And of course you would like to do that with a person that you like and has the same motivation, right? So is there someone who just says, okay, I only want to work 40 hours a week and not on the weekend, but you have some pressing deadlines, then of course there will come up some feelings that maybe doesn't fit perfectly. And I think that's always the best way to find people from around your situation, studies, friends, which you all need the same mindset. You want to grow something big. If there's someone who is risk-averse or not that risk-affine as you are, maybe, then there will be some conflict. Right?
Maybe one more question. Yeah, and then we need to move on. One thing, because I think most of us will also be at the dinner tonight, right? Will you actually for dinner? You have to feel invited to go. And then maybe we can also, if there are more questions, and we want to keep up this discussion, because I think, this is why we're all here, right? We can also, discuss this stuff over dinner later on. But
So hi, I'm Chandan. I'm from the Université Côte. First of all, thank you all for your presentations and your for sharing your experiences. I actually had a couple of questions. I mean, because each one of your slides had a point that kind of resonated, and I was actually hopeful that our students could use that particular point and then see how we go ahead. So for Tobias, I had a question. You said that before you got your actual investment, you said that there was a feeling of being unresolved, that you didn't really hit your targets in terms of what you were doing. And the question I had basically is to say that when you feel that sense of discontentment that you've not really reached, then, how do you apply for an investment to say that, look, I still want funding, but then I'm not really very sure that I'm delivering on the product? If I can continue for Thomas, I had a very specific question because when you said that there are so many changes, like when you guys started, and in fact, when you both started off, AI was still, okay, it's a concept. But then in the 5 years, you said there's a sea change and AI is now literally in everything, right? So my question is, how do you align or change gears when you have an idea? I mean, similar to all our students as well. But then how do you change gears to fit in with the trends that are happening and keep, particularly from a technology startup perspective? And for Yannick, my question is that, I really love the point, and this is something that we're trying to train our students as well, that AI is not for automation, it's more like force enhancement. But then the thing is, you also mentioned that, genetic AI, you've got so many more tools that are coming up, and month on month, they become more powerful. So at what phase is it force enhancement and not automation? Because, for example, when you said you had a 24-hour turnover to come up with a new iteration, but then as tools get more powerful, the sense of automation becomes harder, right? It becomes more easier. So how do you keep yourself on the learning curve rather than say, actually, now I'm, like my analogy is I love motorcycles. So you start on a moped and that takes you to a certain extent, it's a small Vespa. And then suddenly you realize that what you're riding is a 1300cc Harley and it's going to literally take you off. So at what point do you just say, oh, actually, it's going off on its own? So where do you stay in control on a more powerful sort of an engine? So I thought probably that might reflect with some of the points of view that we heard this morning from the students. So how do you resolve when you haven't met what you are in investment?
It was a very elegant way to merge three questions into one now.
That's how I was operating.
And try to answer quickly because so what we wanted to do from the beginning was to build platform, to build an analytics platform. But to build an analytics platform, you need time. Especially if you don't, I mean, today is probably it's like a 2-hour thing, and then you have an analytics platform, but then it still took time and then sweat and blood. And time costs money, right? So you need a way to fund yourself over the time, which is why we did the consulting. But consulting also takes time. So we were basically it wasn't that it was very specific targets that we did not hit, and that was the development target. So we were like, well, we can probably do this consulting stuff for the next 10 years and be reasonably well off. But none of us wanted to do that. So it was basically this decision. Okay, we had a bit of reserves from all of the consulting. So we said, let's turn down the consulting a bit. Let's invest time into finding investors, into selling, our solution that we want to build to investors. Right. And that was basically the thing. So you need to find time. If you still believe in your solution, of course, but sort of the necessary condition. If you still believe in your solution, you need take the time to actually play that game. Because it does take time. It does take preparation. Probably not as much today anymore as it used to, but
which is why the first one was directed to you. For Thomas, the question again was like trends and then your idea. So when are you shifting gears to say, actually, let's align ourselves into what is actually more existent? Because it also gets you more customers. You put in AI somewhere, you have more.
So I think the most important part when working or when developing a startup is to be customer centric. Right, customer centric is a big buzzword. But what does it really mean? You have to go out and talk to your customer, right? So you can. So we have said, I think the first prototype that we developed took 1 year. And I think you can do it now in like 1 week with all the tools you have available, and then just go out, talk, show it to your customers. And I think we iterated nearly every week, right? So on our value proposition, on our framing, on our solution, and you have to iterate, you have to show it, you have to iterate, you have to show it to stay at the customer needs. Because the worst thing you can do is like, I think this is a good solution. Then you go to your basement, develop for 1 year, and then you go out. But the world already has changed, right? So just talk to your customers and show it to them.
Okay. So did I understand correctly? When I changed from co-creation to automation, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
In software development.
Yeah, and because each time you see your AI tools are consistently becoming more powerful, right? So at one point you think, yes, this is a tool that I'm using, because you don't want people to go back into automation. Like you said, you don't want to have your AI create content and then just say, yeah, auto-publish. You want to verify, right? But then at some point, what happens is as the AI learns quicker, your content becomes far more refined. So you can actually auto-publish at some point. So the thing is, what is the handoff limit as a young entrepreneur right now? Because you're in your masters right now. So as you can see, year on year or month on month, the AI becomes more powerful. So how do you ensure that you're not falling into automation? How that you keep that edge of yours to say, no, I'm going to keep working with AI rather than say, I'm going to let AI work for me?
Currently, we are really on the leading edge of AI, Gen AI, agentic AI. We know what is going on, like what all the players are doing, what is the newest features, newest trends, and I think it's sometimes overwhelming to check it all, or then you try to automate it more, but then you fall on your nose. You do some mistakes, and then you don't know where is it coming from. It's like a change made 3 days ago, and you didn't even notice. The head of point would be when I really know that the AI can make better decisions about, is this really what I wanted? Then I can do it. But I don't see that in the next 2-3 years. Or 1-3 years.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your questions. And I think before we come to the closing statement, okay. So, like only one point, because we have saw 3 different cases where AI was kind of core technology or had a huge impact on the shape or on the main central piece of the venture. But of course, there are other kind of skills and other way of impacting where AI impacts entrepreneurship. And often, like in certain kind of research, there is also a point where female founders or female students often don't use AI as much as the main colleagues or the male students as well. So even though the panel was mainly motivated by male founders, we have also a kind of audience where female future entrepreneurs also sitting in the crowd. So we would like to leave that on a positive note, that even it's a trial and error kind of experiment, you should try to learn more and embrace your skills, AI technology skills, of course, and you can find different ways. It doesn't need to be tech-like startups. It could be another way. So there are a huge kind of world where AI meets entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship meets AI. So thank you all. Thank you for the wonderful panelists. And thank you to you all for listening and asking the questions.